Hi everyone, welcome to Book of Katherine. So this is a really important video that I'm doing today, and it is so important that there's not an appropriate background. I recognize that. There's not ever going to be an appropriate way to approach the subject. There isn't. I'm approaching it because the cost of not doing it is much greater than if it, does that make sense? Like, it's too great for me to not do it. Like, I have a responsibility with the things that I have learned in my research. And it's not, this purpose of this video is not to like necessarily share like the conclusions of that research at all. The purpose of this video is to support you in your journey and your research, and to make you consider some things that you may not know that I do as an insider, and just help you out on that front, because there are some things that I do know and that I haven't seen anyone bring up anywhere. And so I'm like, all right, I want to share that with you and help you and support you in your research. And then later on, share some links below that I have found to be, I guess, the most credible. You've seen from my research that I kind of go where the evidence is. I'm not looking for an opinion. I'm just looking for source material so that I can draw my own conclusions from it. I think that we humans are extremely intelligent. We are incredibly intelligent, and we have really good instincts if we take the time to sit down and actually listen to them. And just, that's why I think they're removing so many things from the internet, because they are realizing that, wow, if we just look at it, we might actually draw our own conclusions. They would never remove it if they thought that we were stupid. You know what I mean? So we're incredibly intelligent people. And so I leave it to you to, I understand that people have looked at the same evidence and come up with a number of different conclusions. That's not the point. The thing is that it's important to know that the evidence exists, because that's what they're trying to, there's a lot of evidence that they just never released. For example, and this is why I think it's so important. Did you know that it wasn't just 3 buildings that fell that day? It was 7. Did you know that? Did you know, like, when you hear about the World Trade Center being rebuilt, and I remember hearing of this, the site, World Trade Tower 1, Tower 2, and I remember hearing about, oh, the site's going to have, and Tower 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I was like, wow, they're really going to build a lot of buildings on that park that was there. Like, that's going to make up for the 2 towers. And no, I mean, I didn't live in Manhattan. I didn't know it well enough. There were 7 huge buildings. And when that voluminous cloud went down, that's what they took them down. And I'm not saying the explosions, because I'll include a video below. But if you watch like explosions, like I'll just include a video below. But that just, there's evidence, like, I'll just leave that with you. So I'm not drawing that conclusion. My point is, did they tell us that 7 buildings fell that day? Like, set on fire, torn apart, gutted out, carved out, flattened? Did they tell you that those big things we saw fall to the ground, did they tell you that they never actually hit the ground? President Bush. Oh God. The whole media, we all praised him, right? For being so calm and staying so calm with those kids, right? Just staying calm for the kids. Such a praiseworthy thing. Staying calm for the kids and not freaking them out. There was another plane in the air. His location had been public for 3 days. One had hit a tower. One had hit the Pentagon. No one knew where the other plane was. It was just they knew a plane was lost. What does a Secret Service agent do? Do they whisper in a president's ear and walk away and let him sit there for another 30 minutes? Just things we don't think about. Matt Lauer, I believe it was Matt Lauer. I have a link that has the video. Said he had to go to break to talk about an incident at the World Trade Center before it actually happened. The BBC stood in front of the World Trade Center 7 and announced that it had just collapsed for minutes, just talked about it on and on and on, saying that it had collapsed and it was so terrible and that it had collapsed. And then as she's talking, she goes on for like how long? 10 minutes? Some extraordinary amount of minutes. And then it goes down. Like it's still standing. No one expected that building to go down. And then it just goes down. Like we don't hear about that. And those are the videos they're removing. You know all that steel they said they carted off to China? Why aren't there any pictures of that? There's so many videos of people on the harbor videotaping, you guys. So many cameras on the towers falling, rescuing people. There's nothing. There's nothing. Now I want to talk to you about just keep those. Finally, last thing. How did a CNN reporter, with all of our satellites, all of our mission personnel, it took us how long to find Osama bin Laden? How long did it take us to find Osama bin Laden in all those hills with all those military operations? How long did it take us to find him and take him out? But a CNN reporter found him in 2 weeks, just a few weeks before 9/11. Found him in a cave, walked in with a camera crew, and they interviewed him. You think our CIA couldn't have pretended they were CNN? They couldn't have followed them? They couldn't have taken the pictures and figured out where he was and gone in afterwards? And then interviewed him and he said, oh, I'm going to attack the U.S. There were people that said after that interview, we'll be attacked and they will say it was him. Why is there there's so much, you guys. There's so much. But like the NORAD information, 46 exercises. Originally, the guy that the paper I gave you such good research. You will find a lot of people saying that there were 4 NORAD exercises on that morning, or 5 NORAD exercises. it was that guy. He kept researching for like the next 5-10 years, and he found 46 in all. He found like 41 more. That's how safe we were. It took that many, that entire spreadsheet, to get us to be that vulnerable. There, 2 more things. Like, the rest of the research is up to you. But when you do it, please keep this in mind. Please keep this in mind. Networking. Like, I'm sure you're sitting here thinking, oh, our government did this to us. It's never that simple. That is the one thing you'll never hear anyone out there on the internet say to you. And that is a very carefully chosen thing. And yet, think about it. When you graduate from college, what do they tell you to do to get a job? They tell you to network. Network, 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 network. When you are online on Facebook, they tell you to network. Facebook is designed by network. What is LinkedIn? Networking. Make connections. Make connections here, there, there, there. Why do you make a network of connections? You network so that you yourself become more strong and more powerful and lift your way up in the world. And yet the news media very conscientiously makes you think that politicians don't network. They make you think that it is going to be the new American century only. They're going to think you think, oh, it's Mossad only. Or they're going to make you think it's the Bin Ladens only. Or the Republican or Democrat. They're going to, doesn't everybody make you think it's just this one party, as if they don't cross over? But I'm just going to point this out to you guys. It's never that simple. Let me give you a very, very simple timeline that I've put together. And again, I'm only giving it to you because I just don't know if it'll be out there anymore for much longer. But in the research I've given you and the research you're going to find below, I want you to think very, very clearly about this. There are some undeniable facts that we know. We know that after Reagan, Cold War, after Vietnam, we were not in any, out of war. Our country had gotten used to being out of war. Cold War ended with Reagan, and let me tell you, as much as the media tries to downplay Reagan, there's a reason they do that nowadays. It was a big frickin' deal to end that Cold War. And he didn't do it until he almost died, until he survived good, ripping through his jacket. You can go and see the holes in it. He's like, I was put on this earth for something. If I was kept alive, there must be a reason for it. And so he decided to end it, and it was not freaking easy. And we demilitarized, and it was a big deal that both countries, we started demilitarizing. And all that time, Saddam Hussein was doing all the things he used to do, all the things that he was still doing, all the way up until former CIA director H.W. Bush came into office. And citizens of Kuwait hired 40 advertising campaigns, 40 advertising agencies to get the American people to get on board for war again, including Hill and Knowlton and the testimony you saw before Congress, in order for us to go into war. Networking. Let's move on. So, H.W. Bush comes into office. We have a huge war in Iraq. Then the Clintons come into office. Clintons come into our office, and they sell off everything. They sell off room nights. They sell off the China. They sell off absolutely everything. They root out. You saw Game of Thrones. I mean, they sold that White House, and we're learning it is possible. Like, we're learning about what else, like, everything's for sale. When they have power, they sell it. They sell whatever they see their government positions as selling points. And we know that. It's been proven. It's hardcore. It's so funny when people are like, why don't you release it so we have dirt on her? And I'm like, we have 30 years of hardcore evidence, facts of everything. It's just no one will prosecute. And that includes the Bush administration. Why do you think that is? Networking, you guys. It was during the Clinton administration that the FBI and the CIA released the internet, that the CIA came together with the journalists and met, and that document, the 1996 document, came out. It was in 1997 when the New American Century got together with Jeb Bush and Cheney or whatever, and then the other guy, Romney. But that all happened with the Clintons. You think that's not unrelated? You think it's really unrelated that then the next year after that, then suddenly, like, the World Trade Center becomes privatized so that it can be sold off. And then the year after that, Hillary Clinton, magically, mysteriously, out of nowhere, runs for office in New York, where there's about to be a really big real estate boom. Be smart, you guys. You have to be smarter than what they tell you. Think about how the real world works. The last thing I'm going to leave you with is a thing called, that was my insider bit. The final thing is, there is a woman out there who talks about collectors in the intelligence community and like the collecting movements and the collector movements. That is a real thing. That's not a made-up fantasy. If they can't control a narrative like through the media and things like that, they absolutely will control through other means. Like, they will go out and create a movement and cultivate it that way. Like, they'll go out and they'll net everybody and say things they think they want to hear. Like, there's this one journalist that goes out and she seems like, she nets all these people. Like, she seems like she's out there. She seems like she's the one person that will actually say whatever it is you want to hear about Hillary. But then absolutely everything else. Like, then there's little things in there that just like are shocking and not true and actually undermine the people who are doing real research. And I'm like, but that's not true. How can you have all this really good research that no one else is saying, which also shows you something? I'm like, how do you know that? Like, no one knows that. How the heck do you know that? Like, that's big research. Like, how does no other journalist know that? And how are you getting away with saying that? And then suddenly putting out this big lie that doesn't coincide. And then everything else, then using that platform, gets to go on all these other like independent and conservative sites and then totally puts out false information about terrorist organizations and things like that. And people believe them because they believe like the Hillary narrative. And so it's like a netting thing. And it takes a while to figure those people out sometimes. And it's exhausting. But there are some things that you can kind of noticed. I've noticed some patterns, at least with 9/11, and I don't want to like give you too much because I want you to be free to make your own decisions and your own things, but it can get exhausting. Let me just give you two examples. Okay, so for examples, I'm going to give you a link below to the FAA. Like, finally, the Freedom of Information Act came through, and all of the FAA airwave tapes were released. Well, somebody did an excellent thing of like what actually happened on that morning, like the FAA tapes. And it's quite damning. Like, it's quite damning that people knew it was coming. It sounds very much like other tapes we've heard lately and other tapes we've heard in other situations. You start getting used to the sound. And the thing is that when what happened is when they put that out there, it right before the release and after the release, a flood of other similar looking, which is why I'm doing this video, a flood of similar looking, similar titled, similar JPEGs, similar everything, saying a totally different narrative and editing the tapes to make it sound like exactly the story that was put out by the media and being like, oh, isn't this the story? Isn't this the story? And I'm just like, yes, right. Because when it's buried in that, like, who's going to listen to all of them to find the real one? Like, who's going to do that and be like, well, I'm sure one of these has a different story. Like, you have to be determined to hear something different in order to actually find it. And unless you know that there is a concerted effort by like government agencies to like actually, make sure people don't find real evidence, like the actual evidence, which always tells you something's wrong. Always tells you something wrong when you can't find real evidence. Anyway, just all that rings in my head is those punch holes. Like building 3, just punch hole. There's building 6, I think it is, just the hole punches that just in my head punches. And then that's when I learned there's a video, I'll have to find it. One of the interviews during a Q, she was presenting, and someone got up and talked about John Perry Barlow bringing everyone down for parties at the base of World Trade Center. And he had a filtering system on to make sure that it filtered out all of the fumes at the base. And I was just like, how did he know to do that? Until I did more research and I learned what I learned about the Declaration. And then I contacted some people and I learned what I learned. So anyway, I really hope this supports your research. I am not asking you to believe any one thing, but I do think that the goal is fear. The goal was to make us scared and to take away our power. I don't know if I don't and I think we have a right to know the crime scene. It's our America too. Like, we have a right to know the crime scene. And I guess I just want to enable you to consider, here is the evidence that it took me months to find, and YouTube's making it harder. Google's making it almost impossible for you to find it. So I feel like it's almost my civic duty to just give it to you. And I'm not asking you to believe it. I'm saying that if you're following me, you must love my research. So this is what took me months to find, and I know my insiders love it. Every day they want to know what else I found. So I just have to assume you are the same way. This is what I found, but I am not asking you to ascribe to. I know some people, I've seen other channels and they're like, what exactly do you believe? And I'm like, it's what I don't believe anymore. That's what's important. It's like what I don't believe anymore, and what you need to be very honest with yourself about being realistic. It will very much set you free, like in a way, because it really bound us. God, it really bound us. You don't understand how much it bound us, how much they bound us. They put us in so much bondage, and I really hope this sets you free. And if you want nothing to do with it, by God, you're free to do that too. By God, you're free to do that too. You're free. And just the last thing is, don't forget to download it. Don't forget to download it, because they're going for it. Yeah. So, I love you guys. Congratulations on making it this far in the video. That takes bravery. And if you do have family and friends who are interested in this sort of thing, share this with them, because guarantee you, if they're curious and they like crime scenes and sort of things like that, they're going to want to know this. If they love America, they're going to want to know this. Like, it is not anti-American. That's what they tell you. Though, that's the final thing I forgot to tell you. By the way, Bush is the first one that did the conspiracy theory thing, by the way. That's the first time you see saying, I don't want to see conspiracy theories. That was Bush on a microphone right after 9/11 saying, shut down all the conspiracy. He was the first one doing a war on free speech after the PC movement, which was like Hillary, like the Bush. In my opinion, if you look at, my final thing is, look at the Clinton Foundation. It's the Bushes and the Clintons. Like, there is this, like, and we think, oh, it's Democrats versus Republicans. Why do you think they do that to us? And why do you think things didn't change? We did that whole money thing. And I was like, look at how nothing changed. Nothing changed. Why do you think Game of Thrones, we learned that Jeb and Clinton worked together so closely? And then he said something amazing. He said, because they had the exact same backers. They didn't back anyone else in this race. Why do you think they didn't want Trump? Losing Jeb was huge, because it's part of this whole thing. Hillary's biggest backer, her biggest backer was military. Did you know that? Military manufacturers. There's a lot to be set free from. Love you guys. Bye. Enjoy your research. And I worked really hard on those. Go down there. Watch all of them. I worked really hard to find those. They are not easy to find. And a lot of those people are banned. Like, oh, that's right. One of them. Like, that's why I don't like Alex Jones and stuff like that. He does some good things. I found some amazing things, but I watch him very carefully, because like one of them, he won't even touch some of it. And I'm like, I am very wary. That's another thing on research. Be very, very wary. If a group kicks members out, like there's a woman down there, like the Truth Movement, if they say her name, they kick her out. That's a sign of a collection movement. Absolutely. If they kick anyone out, find people who are willing to look at and listen to anything. An open mind. That's how people approach crime scenes. They want to look at everything and examine it and then see if it has value. Anyone who automatically has a closed mind to something and will not look or even listen, God, that's a red flag. Oh, that's such a red flag. And also, if they front load their presentations with, look at all the people who say I'm great. Look at all the, like I used to be establishment, but I'm not anymore. Look at all the quotes that say I'm great. Look at all the people. That's like the fluffing thing. That's also a sign of collection. So just be aware of that. They have some good things, but then it's what they leave out. That's always the most dangerous thing. It's very sneaky, but it's CIA. They have the best. They did all the, they've done all the research in the world on our minds. They know that we think, oh, they gave a 3-hour presentation. That must be all there is to know. No, it's what they left out. That was the most important part. But they think you'll be exhausted at 3 hours. So I hope I give you, it's the best of what I found, and I hope it helps you in your research. And